This week's ONEDOOR Studios update. For a second time, we join Arthur Bavelis from Family Office Insights for one of the most comprehensive updates for our investors on our business strategy and the status of calculated series progress. Join us as we jump straight to the details.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We're broadcasting live from Brooklyn, New York, Santa Barbara, Colorado, and Northern California, right? Did I get it all, guys?
Did.
Yeah. So thank you for being with us today. We are super happy to have ONEDOOR Studios back again to not only tell us about the success so far, but talk more about their plans and going forward and the crowdfunding campaign, among other things. And so we're super happy to have them back. And I would, in the spirit of or not being negative about anybody else, but in the spirit of appreciation, this is all Jay's fault. The guy Jason Brents, who's up there, so we're going to blame him. And so we had a lot of participation in the last webinar, and we're super happy to have you guys back. As you all know in the audience, we can't hear or see you, but we would encourage you to post your questions in the Q&A or the chat box as they come to mind. We have a lot of people coming on today, so we'll get to as many as possible. So as you think of them, just put them in there. We'll try to get to as many as possible, as I mentioned. Also, as you are participating today, if there's anybody that you think that would benefit from hearing what you hear today, not only will we be posting, I think we're going to post this on the Family Office YouTube channel, but if not, you guys will have the file. So it's up to you whether we post it or not. But in any event, we'll be putting everybody in touch directly with ONEDOOR, and we encourage you to also share it with those who would benefit from hearing what you hear today. We appreciate that, and you don't need to call Family Office Insights to get that done. You can just go directly to ONEDOOR. So with that, thanks again, guys, for being here today. Steve, it's all yours.
All right, great, guys. Thanks so much for joining us today. And we assume that maybe there's a few people from last time that were on here. Maybe not, we don't know, but we want to welcome you guys back. And we also realize there's probably a ton of new people on this webinar today. So thanks for joining us, and we really appreciate you guys coming. So for those who you were with us last year or who know anything about us, I want to give you a little update on where we have come since last year. So last year we were working on a project called Calculated, and this is a novel series on Amazon. We bought the film rights for award-winning novel series, highly rated. And at that time, we didn't have a screenwriter to adapt the novel series to screenplay yet, and now we do. And the writer is Emmy award-winning writer Anne Peacock, who wrote the screenplay for The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, C.S. Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia. And that film, along with director Andrew Adamson, grossed over $1.5 billion between the box office, streaming, ancillaries afterwards. And so we're proud to say that she's our writer. We don't have Andrew Adamson yet, but that is actually who we're going after to direct this project. So we're really excited about that. We had a successful raise. We raised the full development cost of the film, and we completed that in November or December of last year. So now what we're doing is we have a new set of projects, which are the sequels. Now, everybody always says, wait a second. Why are you doing the sequels before the first film is out? If we look to Hunger Games and what's the other one? Lord of the Rings. Look to Hunger Games and Lord of the Rings as an example, is they create the entire series all at the same time. So Hunger Games, each film was released 1 year apart from the other on virtually the exact same date. And that's kind of our plan, is this entire series is calculated, activated, simulated, and liberated. These 4 novels, we're treating them as an entire series, just like the Hunger Games, to be released roughly a year apart each film. So the first question, by the way, guys, I know you don't want to hear me talk the entire time. You want to ask questions. So I'm going to let you know I'm only going to talk for about 2 minutes here, and then we're going to hand it over for questions. But I wanted to give you guys a complete overview of how we do business. Why in the world should you listen to us? Why do we know anything different than everybody else who's raising money for films out there? And there is a lot of major differences. Typical film investment that everybody hears about is investors invest in the production costs of the film. The script's already written, somebody's got a passion project, and so they raise money for production. And then they kind of shop the film festivals and see who wants to buy this film. And the likelihood of getting your film bought is very slim to none. 13,000 films are made like this per year, and only about 5 ever get picked up for distribution at Sundance. So that's not our business model. Our business model is rather different. We focus on what the audience wants, which is in turn is what the studios will want. And if the studios want it, then the banks will be on board to do production costs. And of course, a bunch of questions are starting to raise in your mind right now. We're going to answer all of them for you. So we actually do development separate from production costs. We raise development costs, meaning we take the story, the property, and we bolster it by an amazing script from an amazing script writer. We attach main talent. We attach a main director. We establish brand tie-ins. For example, BMW, you've seen BMWs in a film. That's brand tie-ins, where BMW pays part of the film production costs to have their brand in the film. We have production incentives from the locations around the globe where the film is shot. That's real money that comes in. And then we have a bond company, which ensures that the film will be done on time and on budget. And we take all those things and we take it to a bank, which has a production department like Chase Bank, East West Bank, Bank of America. And they give us a production loan for the entire production cost of the film. In this case, for this film, is roughly $60 million per film. The first question people might ask is, what bank is going to loan for a film? We've been approached by 3 banks this year saying, hey, we want to be your bank for the production costs for this film. So we already have some great relationships with banks. Our model is very similar to the production companies like Centropolis, who did Independence Day, Resurgence, Midway, and also Tom Hanks' Playtone production company. Very similar business model that separates development and production. So I think we're almost at the end of my 2 minutes now, because I promised 2 minutes. So I want to open it up. And John, I know I missed some stuff. So you're thinking what I missed right now. John, what did I miss?
Missed that the banks, in fact, don't take any risks.
Correct.
So the proposition that they have for us, and this is the same as the proposition we have for them, and that is that they're lending us money because they have capital, not because they're taking risks. They don't read the script. They don't say, oh yeah, this is the kind of picture we want to do. They're really looking at the bond company first. The bond company does a full review on the project. They look at the licensors or the licensees for the project, people that we might, distributors in major territories that we might use to give us part of the capital in the form of a license. And they report to the bank as far as the banks do a credit search on them as well. But they find out, in fact, they're credit worthy if they can take the review, and if not, if a letter of credit or some other form of guarantee beyond a license is needed, they provide that.
Right.
But that's the one thing is that it's more like a construction loan. The bank takes in consideration the kind of collateral that we bring them plus the bond.
Right. And so real quick is what are we doing this time? What is the raise for this time? The raise is for the subsequent 3 films, for the 3 books after calculated. And the total raise is $7.2 million. Our return structure is that once each film goes into production, this is before the film is made, the investor receives depending on your contract and your level of investment, receive at least 110% back of your initial investment before the film is even shot. Now, since there's 3 films, it comes in thirds. But that way we're mitigating investor risk, because you're not banking on the film to be successful to get your money back. You're just banking on the film gets into production. So it's much safer for the investor this way. And then if the film does break out in the box office, then you're just receiving all of the extras and the gravy on top of that in perpetuity. And you're receiving 50% of that each particular film's development company's net profits.
That's great, Steve. If I could interject, Joe Crotty, that actually answers your question exactly. So just to recap what Stephen just said, because you asked,
What was his question?
his question was from a conservative point of view. If Calculated does not open well or sequels aren't ordered, then what would happen to our investment in the sequels?
Right. So essentially, the film just needs to go into production for you to receive your initial investment back before you're made whole. And then if it does well, and of course we plan for it to do well, then everything else is additional on top of that.
Right. So at least 110% of your investment will be returned when we get the bank loan before we've started rolling cameras even. And then everything else, the 50%
Right.
of the profits is gravy. It's
And
good.
people are
So
asking,
that's,
how does that work? How does that work is because when we receive the production loan from the bank, that initial per film $2.4 million is actually an advance on production costs. So the bank loan pays production costs, so we pay our investors back their production advance is how it works.
So
That's
can
a
I
huge,
just,
that's a huge differentiator
yeah,
from almost every production company investment. Most production company investments have a single tranche return, and that's you get a percentage of the profits of the film. So you just hold on until that happens, and then hopefully you get enough to get your money back. But this one, having a two tranche investment construct is a huge benefit, because as Stephen said, before the film goes into production, out of the bank production loans, the funds, that pays the investors back plus a little vigorish, at least 10%. And then still have a year before the picture's done and is in release. And then after that, you can receive, the picture does well, the better the picture does, the more you receive. But the pressure's off relative to a return on investment, which is beautiful structure, actually.
And people may be asking, why do you need investors if you have bank funding for production? And the answer is that we need the development capital to get to the point where we can get the bank loan. We don't have $2.4 million in our pockets to simply go and do the development for each stage. That's where investors come in. And the great part about it is it's really leveraged. If we were asking investors for $60 million for production costs, then the film would have to do really good for you to even get, a 2x return. But because we're leveraging the capital, we're leveraging the $2.4 million per film to get $60 million from the bank to, as we've calculated for each film, the film has to do at least 2x return on production costs. So 60 million is 120 million. So essentially the $2.4 million brings in 120 million if it's a 2x return. And then you're receiving 50% of the development company's net profits. So leveraging capital is what we're doing.
Yeah, and the investors are in the best position of that because they're putting up 2.4 of film, which is 7.2 for the three pictures. But in almost all of that are production expenses. So of the 2.4 million, we have about 600,000 or so, 700,000 for the screenwriter. Then we have attaching the director is a 10% fee of the 10% of the director's fee, which is usually in the $3 to $8 million range, so 300,000 to 800,000. And the same thing with actors. That's usually about 10% of their fee amount. So most of that 2.4 million is just covering real pure production costs that are advanced while the picture is in development. And for the benefit of doing that, you get your money back when the picture goes into production out of the production funds, and then share in a hefty share of the profits as well, half of the development company share.
So Arthur, I want to give it to you for a second because you are aware of the comments there. If there's anything you want to read before we give an overview of who we are and our backgrounds.
yeah, if it's okay with you, just a point of clarification that might help. The bank's loan is collateralized by the bond, so they have no risk. That's pretty clear. To get to the place where you get the bond, the risk lies in not getting the bond. Is that fair to say?
Kind of.
Yeah.
The bond is the first stop we make because it's the first question the bank asks. So who's the bond company? Because the bond company is the one who really looks at all the creative aspects of the film, the bondability of the director and the cast, and all manner of other things. So when we go to the bank, we've already met with the bond company. We've had them sign off on the budget, the production schedule, the production budget. And then we go to the bank and also our plan for collateral. So they want to know who the licensors are. If we're shooting in, wherever the location is, they will look and verify that, yeah, those are the production incentives right now. And they'll tell us, oh, they've already been let for 2022. Oh, we're shooting in 2023. Yep, they still have a third or whatever. But we have to lock them in by such a date. And they review all of those things so the bank doesn't need to. And that's why the bank asks first, who's the bond company? And we use Film Finances, which is the largest in the world. They even have an office. We'll probably shoot the first picture in Shanghai. They have an office there as well as their headquarters in LA, but they have 5 other offices around the globe. But good question, and that's the answer.
Arthur, I'll add to that, because what I hear you asking is, what is the risk that Film Finances might turn us down?
Yep.
Because that's a risk, and that we mitigate that risk by bringing on someone of the stature of Ann Peacock. You know, she has not only the capability but the experience, and that brings our script up to this extremely high level.
Yeah, totally makes sense. So also what I was getting at is that the guarantor or the counterparty risk for the bank is by definition the same counterparty risk for the investor to get their 110% back. So when you look at it that way, the investor, the early investor, is arguably comfortable with the same counterparty that a bank would be.
Yeah, good point, Arthur.
Yeah,
really good point.
Yeah. So let's jump in here for a couple things. Answer the first one. Yes, we're going to be recording this. I think we're going to give it to you guys to publish a weekend. I don't know whether we decided that yet or not, but that was one of the questions. What led you to buy this Park Ocular series of books? Particular, sorry. I thought it was an industry term that I didn't understand. And the author recognition, what was it?
Jay, you got this one, and when you're done, I have a quick addendum to add to what you're going to say.
Well, yeah, I mean, early on, a good friend of mine who was an early partner and now is doing her own organization. She introduced to John and I. John and I we have a slate of other projects, but she introduced this one and said, "Hey guys, I really think you should try reading this." It was in the manuscript form. A friend of hers, wrote it, and we're like, "Yeah, okay." And a month later, I finally started reading it, and it was all over from there. It's just, and this is an experience. If you go on Amazon and Goodreads and you just look at the number of stars and you look at the reviews, it is just one of the best reads. Stephen likes to say, because he does, like me, he's got kids and he doesn't have a lot of time to be reading novels nowadays, usually, unless he has to for work. But Stephen, you would agree, right, that it was just hard to put down and
could not put it down.
Yeah.
And if I might add, the Ann Peacock, our writer, she receives, and she said when she met with us, she said, "Man, I receive books all the time, from people trying to pitch me to write for them. They may have money, they may not, but
her agents send them to her all the time."
Yeah, they send her books, and then she kind of opened up calculator, like, yeah, like every book she opened up, yeah. And she began to read it, and she emailed us and said, "This is astounding." And then emailed us a day after that saying, "I want to meet." And she told us that she said, "I have to do this story." So that's kind of the power of what we have here, this property. Yeah.
Not that she was an easy negotiator. There's still
No.
her agents. Her agents are tough. So she didn't give it away. But yeah, money was not enough. for sure, especially in the climate that we found ourselves in. This was just post-COVID, and the best writers were not available for any price. And it became all about they're as good as their last project. So they're very, very selective on the project. And she was over the moon about this one, which made it doable. Otherwise, we never would have gotten her.
Right. She even said that if we had requested 6 months earlier, she would have been too busy for it.
Yeah, she wouldn't have been able to even look at it.
So can you comment again, Steve, about the director?
Yeah, so the director of the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe with Anne Peacock was Andrew Adamson. He's the one who directed the first of the Narnia series. And from the start, we kind of had in our minds we wanted to get Anne Peacock and Andrew Adamson. And then you know, we thought, what are the chances? But then we ended up with Anne Peacock. So now we are kind of on the path. We want to approach him next. It's kind of our next line item is to approach Andrew Adamson. So if we can get that team that has that kind of a history, then you know, we have a home run, I believe,
Yeah.
here.
We definitely don't want to get ourselves in a corner or overspeak about it. We
Correct.
do not know his availability. It looks like he's available. We have not approached him yet.
Correct.
So we're not saying that we're going to get him, but he is on our list because he is the quality of director that he is, and they've worked together and so forth, just like Steven said.
Yep.
So, but if we can't get him, there are other great directors that are looking for strong material, and we will get a studio caliber director. And the studio signs off. We give them what's called a short list of directors and actors before we ever set anyone, and they sign off and let us know who would be acceptable to them. Then we go after them, and so we're sure we're kind of backing into that relationship. So we're confident that we will be delivering the studio what they have to have in order to give us the deal we need.
Yeah, totally makes sense. Somebody is asking who is Arthur B, and I was wondering that too.
Funny.
I'm not going to sugarcoat this one. Hello, what happens to the investors' development funds in worst case scenario if you don't get a loan from the bank?
John, that's you.
Yeah, it is. So again, there are about a dozen banks with entertainment departments because it's really good business. The banks like that. As I think Stephen mentioned, but it may have been Jay, we've been approached recently already by 3 banks. But we bank with the largest entertainment department bank in the industry. They're not the cheapest, but there's almost the way we approach it, that is not our most vulnerable point. So the bank is very predictable. As long as we deliver them something that has the collateral and the bond company acceptable, unless it was really rough material that they wouldn't want the bank associated with, which we don't do,
Right.
we'll get the bank loan. So that's not something that would turn this upside down and put the investors at risk. It would be something like we ran into, in fact, not being able to get a screenwriter the caliber of Anne Peacock, which is what makes this investment so valuable. Or we aren't able to get a director, that of the caliber that we want, which the director is so much reliant on the script. So the script would need to really be over the moon, but that's why we have Anne Peacock where she is to deliver us that. So that's how the dominoes fall. If we have a good screenwriter, we'll likely get the director. If we have the director and screenwriter, we'll likely get the cast that we want. And if we have those, the distributors that we need, the global relationships with them for the collateral are pretty much, that becomes very predictable. The most important market, even though only about a third of the income for each project comes from the United States, the most important market is the United States because they have so much respect for their selection process. So if we get one of the major studios for the theatrical release, and yes, theatrical is still a big deal if you've been following the box office for the last couple of months. then we get a theatrical release from a major studio, and that pretty well assures us we'll
Yep.
get major distributors in the other territories.
Yeah. And so I've seen
Answers your
several.
question. Sorry.
I've seen several questions pop up that are along the lines of what you're saying, John, and a lot of people ask the exact same thing. Because I forgot to mention that once we get the production loan, that's because distribution has already been set up by a major studio and other territories. I forgot to mention that. So we don't ever start filming without distribution already set up. People ask, is this going to be on Netflix, Amazon? Is this theatrical only? The answer is kind of all of the above. For right now, we plan on theatrical initially, because right now theaters are open. But what if this had happened during a pandemic? Then you would have had to pivot like Disney did. Disney's Mulan came out right in the middle of the pandemic, and so theatrical was not even an option. But they pivoted and decided to do a premiere streaming on Disney and charged $39, $30 something dollars just to watch it with your family, and they ended up in the first weekend grossing somewhere around 130 million in the first weekend, 180 million. And the great thing about streaming is you're not sharing the profits with the theater like you are when it's a theatrical release. So all that money was straight profit for Disney. And so we can pivot just the same, if necessary, if there's another pandemic, God forbid. But so the answer to the question is, where is it going to be? It's going to be in theaters, and then there'll be a period of streaming for whatever streamers that we strike contracts with. So that's kind of an unknown at the moment, which ones it will be.
Till we get there.
Yeah, till we get there.
Yeah. But initially, if we have our choice, it'll have a theatrical window first.
Right.
And that will be followed by a premium streaming window, which is that higher cost. But as Stephen said, it may be a smaller group, but the amount of earnings is just extraordinary.
John, James asked the question, basically, how long does production take?
About a year. So it may sound like a long time. Principal photography doesn't take that long. So we have maybe 6 weeks or 8 weeks in prep. And then principal photography takes maybe 12 or 16 weeks. We don't know until we have a script and a UPM, a unit production manager, breaks it down, and then we have a schedule. But and then after that, it's post-production, which is typically 9 months. But now, thanks to technology, it begins your first week of principal photography. They start assembling scenes together.
Yeah.
So it's done in about a year all told.
Yeah. And so where are we right now on the first project? Calculated, we're in roughly I think week 8-ish of the script writing process. We're about to receive our first draft from Anne in about 14 days, end of July. So, but of course, the first film's investment is already closed, but these next ones are starting very quickly.
Yeah, so let's jump into that. Will there be projects after the calculated series where you plan on crowdfunding investors? If so, will it be using the same methods or platforms?
Yes, we do have multiple other projects, and we're currently using WeFunder. There's issues with social media and new privacy rules with Apple and stuff that's making it very complicated to be on WeFunder, which is why we're going to our own website with a Regulation A offering, so we can have a little bit more control over our ability to market. So that'll be on our website, ONEDOORStudios.com, in the near future.
Yeah, super interesting. So arguably the companies that presumably can figure all that out are chastised by the rules that, not that you could circumvent, but legally get around, right?
Right. Yeah. And some of it's just companies' policies now.
Yeah.
It's not even laws. It's just companies' policies. They've decided to withhold information and kind of keep it for themselves, and leaving a lot of people who market in the dark. So yeah, we're finding ways to get around that.
So right now, is the investment open for the second?
Yeah, the investment for Simulated, Activated, and Liberated, which is a package, is open right now on WeFunder.com/calculated sequels. That's currently the only place you can do it if you're doing it online. Of course, we do take phone calls.
we have had quite a flurry of investment right at the front because we have perks depending on how you come in or how soon or how much you get a little bit more. So at least 110%, for instance, on your return, but that goes up to 125% depending on timing and amount.
And
That's
And-
that's initial return. That percentage is initial return, the first tranche. It has
First
nothing to do with
tranche,
nothing to do with afterwards.
But those perks make a big difference. But you can come in for as little as $100, which we love, especially being in the business we are. When we're out branding things, we had 1,400 investors on our first round.
Ambassadors. Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, they are.
Right.
So
And that's actually 1,400 is actually a lower number because we discovered that our project had a much higher average investment than typical investments on WeFunder, probably double the typical investment.
So would it be helpful, you guys, you think, if we just talk about the success of the first raise? Because it actually worked, right?
Yeah, it did work.
yeah, worked really well. Yeah, we had, it was our first outing, so we weren't, we were a little clumsy in our inexperience, in
Marketing inexperience, but trying to raise in a crowd with the inexperience of that element. But
yeah, exactly. But WeFunder was really good at helping us out. They're great to work with. They're a really good company, even though we're going to a more sophisticated securities area of Regulation A instead of a crowdfunding segment. But it was pretty extraordinary. We thought we could raise the funds in about 20 months. And that's what we forecasted. And we ended up raising the 100% of the funds in about half that time, in 11 months. So it was really good for us and really good for the investors as well. We had our largest investor was an investment company from New Hampshire, I think. And they put us through a very rigorous diligence process. And we welcomed it because we wanted to see just how much we knew about what we were doing. And of course, they needed to.
I love the way you put that, John. It's right.
And yes, well, and so we went through the process, and they said we'll come in somewhere between $100,000 and $500,000 if we come in at all. And if you get through the process, they weren't willing to spend any more time on us than we were willing to show that we proofed up basically that we might be worth their investment. But in the end, they put up $500,000, their top amount. And we were, of course, thrilled. That was a fourth of that particular investment. So that was beautiful. Anyway, but we learned through all of those things. And as investments go, which we discovered, the more that's invested, the more other investors are convinced of the soundness of the investment. People that come in that with large investments like they did, it makes them even more confident. But after you're halfway through the raise, so after we hit the $1 million mark, then the other investments came through fairly quickly. And in this case, we were real fast. We weren't, our first 8 weeks, we weren't anywhere close to where we are now.
yeah,
But we have investors already confident in us, and we've got a great investment return and whatever. So we were able to raise over 800,000 in 8
just a
weeks.
few weeks. Yeah. So John, if I could interrupt real quick, is a couple of really important questions that we'll definitely get to. John Med Williams and Rob, we'll get to that in just 2 seconds. Just wanted to, one thing we didn't mention, because none of you, we're assuming everybody knows who we are, or our experience,
Who are these two
So who
fellows?
are these guys? John Lee wrote the book on film financing, and it's used in nearly every major film school around the country and around the globe. He's done work for for Disney, Sony, Paramount, many studios. Worked on 23 major motion pictures in some element with finance or distribution or rights acquisitions. and these films, totaling about $4 billion in revenue. So John's kind of like the godfather, the mastermind of the business plan. I'm more on the production side. I've been a DP for national television shows, Fox Sports, pioneered drone cinematography a decade ago, was in Scientific American magazine for having pioneered that type of cinematography, and I've been an editor for about a decade now. So I'm on the production side, and Jay, kind of a historian, brings a wealth of knowledge for lots of great IP, and so he's our resident brain for story. So the three of us kind of make a really powerful team. So
One other thing I do, which I want to hop in, is the equity crowdfunding element, and I just want to answer James' question. It's a really good question, and the question is there a chance in the future of a Reg D series for accredited investors? And I just want to clarify, if you go back to our previous raise on WeFunder, it actually says 1.47 million, and that's all the Reg CF people, but we raised 1.35 million total, and so the rest of it was
2.35, Jay.
Did I say one?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm thinking ahead too much. 2.35 million, right? So our raise goal was 2 million, and we actually took into our own producer side an extra 3.5 million, 350,000. I'm having a hard time with my numbers, but the point is, even with this one as well, the Regulation A, when we shift to a Regulation A, it'll be the same. We take both everyday investors and accredited investors. We don't need to differentiate at all.
And we can take some large accredited investors through a Reg D instead of a Reg CF or a Reg A.
Exactly.
And so, and Rob Living's question, the investment is only in these specific projects. It's correct. Each individual project has its own entity. And so you're investing in that particular entity, not the company as a whole. Not that we wouldn't entertain an offer for an investment in the company as a whole. We focus mainly on each individual project.
Yeah, because the returns then are tied to specific performance. That's how we can do the two tranche return.
Right.
If you know you're getting your money back out of the production funding from a specific project, then when that event happens, you're looking for that funds to be OCH'd into your ACH'd into your account. So, and that's what will occur.
Yeah. See, Benjamin, what is the total raise for the sequels? It's 7.2 million. We've raised nearly 900,000 to date, and our goal is to be through this raise by the end of the year, I believe, and that answers that question.
There's a couple guys who've asked about the timeline, and I do have that available if you want me to throw it out.
Okay.
Up to you.
Like the timeline of the project itself. Yeah, go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, and just as a disclaimer, it is for the first film calculated, but it gives a general sense of the timing of each film.
Right. So right now we're in that month 1 to month 18 phase right now, where we're script writing, and then at the end of the month 18, when the script is done, then we set up all those distributors and all those things we mentioned before, the collateral, the bond, etc. And then month 22, the production begins, and looks like the global release is about month 38. So you can kind of just take a snapshot of that if you want to. This is what it would be like for one film, how from the start of each film once we start script writing. Yeah, thanks, Jay, for that.
So are the opportunities for brand placements within the calculated and or the sequels, are they available? If so, how can one learn about that?
Yeah,
Can I answer?
they're definitely available.
Yeah.
For sure. It's a little early on, and you want to look at the script. But even from the novel, another reason why it's so great to have a novel in front of a script, so you can get a good sense for, if you're a car brand or soft drink brand or whatever it is, how much of that might be actually in the motion picture and lend itself to selling your product.
Right.
And it's not too early to look at it from that standpoint, but we have someone that is just specializes in that and would review what that might look like, how much, and actually the brand itself tells us what their campaign looks like in 2025, which is when simulated would be released, and how we might tie in together, how that benefit might work. And often it's not a cash deal. Often for us, we'll negotiate if in fact BMW has a budget of X amount of dollars, and they will have something like akin to a trailer that tells when the picture opens, then that has value to us as well as cash. So we'll take part of it in each kind of area.
There's a lot of technology in these stories, especially simulated activated. A tremendous amount of high-tech technology that's featured in there, whether that's through NASA or regarding space or simulations. And so it might be a good film to be a tech company to be a brand tie-in. And one super important element I forgot to mention about the way we do business, and for those, some people, the people who invested the $500,000 into us, they said we only invest in things that have a giving back aspect in it. And we had already committed long before this started that we wanted, for every single project we do, we wanted to donate a significant portion of our profits, not taking investors' profits and doing it, but taking our own profits to advance some good cause. So the first film, we partnered with the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, who kind of fights human trafficking on 3 fronts: prevention of human trafficking, the rescuing of those who have been trafficked, and the rehabilitation of those who've been rescued. And so we've committed to give 20% of our producers' net profits to them. And we have a good, strong relationship with them right now. And we're currently, for the second film, I can't mention who it is because there's no contract signed yet, but it's an organization that provides for children and families in countries that are right above poverty, where perhaps they may have to give their children up if they couldn't afford to care for them. And so we are supporting this organization that right now supports like 2.1 million children, to give them the finances for education, so that parents don't have to give them. A lot of adopted kids don't need to be adopted because their parents simply give them up because they can't afford to keep them. So we want to stop that from happening, prevent orphans instead of adopting orphans. So
You mentioned
not to correct you, Stephen, but you said 20%, and it's actually 25%.
Oh, 25%. Sorry about that. Yeah. 25%.
Yeah, trying to short Nikosi. We're getting in trouble.
what's the did you mention the name of the organization and the first one?
And
Yeah, NCOSE, National Center on Sexual Exploitation, and their website is it's really hard to say, endsexualexploitation.org.
END, yeah.
So someone asked about they've invested in the series. When the reggae is open, will the minimum investment be
higher? No, it's still going to be $100 for a minimum investment.
Yep. And we treat the $100 investor the same as the $100,000 investor.
Yeah,
we appreciate y'all.
We give weekly, or at farthest apart bi-weekly or every other week updates on the project. WeFunder recommends giving quarterly updates. We just don't want to keep our investors in the dark that long about what's going on. So we do weekly video casts to let our investors know where we are this week, or some really important piece of information about the project to help them understand it. And that's been one of the things that our investors are like, this is amazing. I've never been part of an investment where I know everything that's going on, the good and the bad. If we have setbacks, you know about it. If we have wins, you know about it. So really take pride in doing that for our investors.
Did you just see that chat? As an existing investor, I would like to highlight how open and transparent Steve and John and Jay with their investors. There's a constant flow of information and updates, and they're very accessible for questions and input from investors. This has been very appreciated. There you go.
No, I didn't see that, but great timing. Oh, Leanne. Hey, Leanne.
Yeah. Okay, we already answered that one.
Are you open to institutional investors?
Yes. The terms need to be the same because we're kind of democratized on that point. And since we were SEC governed, we have to make sure that it's the same for all investors. But yeah, absolutely. We'd love to have institutional partner.
But as you said, just to be clear, depending on the size of the investment, you've already established different terms, but they've been filed that way.
Exactly.
Got it.
Yeah, the perks we have to file with the SEC. They say, yeah, this is fair, this is appropriate for other investors. As long as you disclose them, then we're good to go.
Yeah, and what conditions? So can we still invest in the series post-October 2022?
If
It
it's,
just depends on if there's anything still open then.
yeah, if the money is still, right now we're at 900,000. It took about 8 weeks to get there. We can't really foresee the future, how quickly it'll go. But I mean, last time we were about 700,000 shy at 1 week, and then within 4 weeks we were done. So
It's true.
Benjamin
Well,
asks, sorry, go ahead, John.
The closer we are to the end, the faster the investments come in.
right.
So
Yeah. Benjamin asks, what led you to buy the rights to this story? We did talk about this earlier. I think what John and I could possibly add is that we kind of compare this to the Hunger Games or Divergent, the quality and power of its story and its franchise nature, and you know, those are hard to find, especially before they go public and are really big and get bought up by someone else. And that's why we felt that it has that power. Do you want to add to that, John?
no, the story power was there, that's for sure. And we do feel like we're I was going to say kind of on a mission, but it's not kind of. We do feel called to make motion pictures that really have something to say.
Right.
It doesn't overwhelm our business sensibilities by a long shot. All of them need to pass a green light, which is very numbers driven, very data driven. On the one hand, just like studios make their decisions, but there is a higher sense of things as well. We want the audiences to not only be thoroughly entertained, but really kind of blown away in some aspect where they get it feeds them. In addition to just raw entertainment, it somehow just makes them glad they went. It's the kind of thing that makes people text before they leave the theater. I've just come out of Calculated, for instance. This was an amazing experience. If you haven't seen it yet, I'm going to see it at least 1 or 2 more times. I'd love to take you with me next time. And usually there's something about the picture. They may not even be able to tell what it is. But there's something about it that just feeds the audience. So we look for pictures that have that aspect to it. So if you follow us at all, you'll see these other pictures that are coming, that each of them are not just a head turner and a lean forward. Oh my gosh, that's going to really be, that could be an amazing film, but it's something that has that little extra something that that could put audiences over the top. And if they don't have that, we're not interested. And this series definitely had that. So.
Hey guys, can I ask a question from an investor perspective, and one that's not privy to the way these things work in film? So let me just say that. Once you get to the 50% profit share for the investor in the house, is it fair to ask whether that's a linear equation from there? In other words, do you have to invest more money to produce the same amount of return? And so if you have $100 million, and forgive me the numbers, you get to profitability at 100, you make another 100, you get 50, the investors get 50. Do you have to invest another 20 million to make that other 100 million come in? Because you know what you're saying is profit. So
Yeah, no, really, really good question. We do have to front load it. If you, when you buy, and Steve kind of pointed to this at the beginning when he was talking about how dysfunctional ad buying and media buying can be. But you have to buy a certain amount of media in order to drive the audience. In theatrical release, if you don't have at least a 60%, if you can't reach 60% of your target audience at least 6 times before the picture opens, you're going to fail opening weekend. And you can equate that to a certain dollar amount. So you really want to be at about an 80% reach of the target at least 12 times before the picture opens. And that's expensive. It's most expensive in the United States. And it's typically in that 40 to even as high as $70 million in media buy alone. That's outside the cost of the picture. So to qualify to make a picture that really is worthy of that kind of media spend because it has that big of audience response is really extraordinary. And that's one reason why we finance development separate from production. You can't just take a swing at it. You really have to fully bake the script. You have to get it to a certain level. If it doesn't happen in 18 months, then you keep working on it. You don't just say, well, you know, we spent all our script money, we just have to make the film now. Then everything kind of falls apart. And that's why we allow for enough money, sufficient funds that we're able to fully develop the picture. So we'll fully satisfy the audience, the studios, the other
the bond company, right?
bond company, yeah,
Yeah,
all of that stuff.
yeah, totally makes sense.
I just want to jump in and say thank you to everybody.
Yeah, seriously.
Such
Thanks for
positive
a lot
comments.
of people on here.
Really appreciate it.
Great questions.
Yeah. The question about like Legion, somebody asked a question about, because Legion M is a
Yeah.
one of our partners, and they have this film going on with William Shatner right now. The question is there a possibility for a partnership with us, like a William Shatner ONEDOOR Studios partnership? And the answer to that is it's kind of dangerous to attach any type of a talent to a project before the director is set, because the director knows who he wants to work with and knows who he doesn't work with. And so if we have, hey, you know, we're going to approach a director and we already have this actor on there who the director is not really used to working with or doesn't want to work with, then it kind of taints the project. So we have to be very careful who we, you know, what talent we put on the project before that happens.
Oh, we love the Legion M team. They're just
Yeah.
great people. They've been really
Yeah.
good to work with.
Yeah, just have a different model. That's all. So
How about this? After 2400 has been raised, will the first sequel be thought to be closed as more funds are gotten? I'm assuming that that's the next thing, but I'm not sure. Do you intend to have gotten 7200 by the end of this year?
Yeah, I think Stephen answered that already. We do expect to have the whole 7.2 million raised by the end of the year. It doesn't happen until it happens. And no, we don't close it at the end of 2.4 million for one project. That's great for one project, but that ignites that project into its full-on development, and hopefully it's early full prep so it can go into production.
And full transparency, because we are opening up, we've been working on the legal stuff for the Regulation A, and we can't have a Regulation A and the CF open for the exact same project at the exact same time. We have to close one to do the other. So in the next, not exactly how many weeks, because we're still haven't gotten our Reg A completely approved yet, we will be closing the WeFunder at some amount, maybe 1.5 million, something like that. And then we'll be raising the balance of that on our website, ONEDOORstudios.com, on our Regulation A platform there.
And what's so good about our Reg A is it's as far as we know, it's the first film industry series Reg A like this, where
on the planet
we won't have that problem in the future. We can actually do multiple raises at the same time.
Yeah, super interesting.
Yeah.
Is there a differential in the terms from going to A to CF?
No, some of the perks will be gone. You know, some of the initial investor perks. There's a slot for a certain number of $100,000 investors, a certain number of $500,000 investors, and some of that will go away. There'll be a sunset on some of those things, but the investment, the way it's structured is basically the same.
Yeah, it has to be.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't mean basically. I mean it is the same.
yeah, regulatory. Yeah.
John, do you want to answer Ben's question? How is Legion M involved? Are they a producing partner?
Yeah, they are, as a matter of fact. They brought us to their investors, and part of our relationship with them is that they'd be involved in the as a production partner in our projects, that they're, you know, so all the calculated and sequels projects, they're also a production partner.
Yeah,
and we're happy to have
yeah.
them. They're really, really
Paul
good too.
Scanlon's a great guy, really.
Yeah, they're
Yeah,
terrific,
whole
and
team.
their investors are amazing as well.
Yeah.
They came through, they picked us up on their shoulders and moved us forward. It's just been a great experience.
Nice.
We like them and they like us. It's almost like a dating relationship, except business.
So maybe see how this goes, but maybe when you guys do the CF thing, we come back, right? That wasn't a pitch. It was just more of a comment. So we'll see how it goes. Just do it this
For
last-
our other projects, we definitely are.
Yeah.
We definitely will. If that was an invitation.
Yeah, well, I just think it's super interesting, and you know, we try to do the best we can to bring people with fundable deals, and you demonstrated that this is one of them. So,
John, David Jones asked an interesting question. I don't think anybody's ever asked it just like that before. Like say this investor comes in on our WeFunder at a level that's 125%, say, and then they come back in again on our Reg A and kind of increase the amount. Does that increased amount get that original higher percentage first tranche return, or does it kind of get almost treated like a separate investment at 110% return? How do we decide to do that?
Yeah, if it's the same person, it would get treated as the higher if we haven't capped out on it. So we'd really like it if you could let us know beforehand. If you say we have 110,000 we want to bring in now, we want to bring 25,000 in a little bit later, but we'd like the $100,000 level of return. Not have the 25,000
be at a lesser rate
at 25,000, right? Yeah, then we can lock in the whole thing at 135,000 on that 125 or 110 and 25 example.
Good question.
Yeah, and we've done that. We had, I think, 2 people in the calculated arrays that had a scenario like that.
yeah. Well, guys, this has been super good. Thanks for doing it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Arthur.
Like I said, we're going to make sure everybody gets in touch with you. We'll send you the list, and you're certainly welcome to either the audience connect with you directly or vice versa. We'll catalyze that. And great job, guys. Thanks for doing it. And thank you for all showing up.
Thanks, Arthur.
Thanks so much, Arthur.
Awesome. And thanks for everyone who may be looking at this. We appreciate it.
And thank you all for the audience. And as I always say, thank you for sharing with us the only thing you can't make more of, and that's your time.